What if Contrapoints really isn't actually transgender? A hypothetical scenario. Oh, ugh. It's hot out and I need to go to the store, but I suppose I'll check social media and hope that it cools down a bit. I'll start with the YouTube comments. Oh, joy. Yet another person commenting on my Contrapoints critique that I wrote back in February. I wonder if they have anything new and interesting to say about it. It's kind of awkward that you keep calling Natalie Contra instead of just calling her she throughout the entire video. You'd think that a supposed queer elder would have a clue that transgender people like to be referred to by their preferred pronouns. LOL. I made an entire video called I Was Called Out for Misgendering After Using Somebody's Name. In it, I explain my reasoning behind doing this. What, do you seriously think I'm gonna watch another one of your moronic videos? Why don't you just call Natalie she? In the video that directly answers your question, which I already referred you to, I explained that the biggest reason I made the choice to avoid using gendered language entirely was the fact that I wasn't sure what their pronouns were, because I had heard people refer to them as both he and she, and I had also heard Contrapoints refer to themselves as a cross-dresser in past videos. Also, as I explained in the subsequent video, why I don't really care about people's gender identity, I simply wasn't very concerned with this person's transition, which is why I spent the entire 16 minutes of my initial video talking about their ideas and never once brought up their gender identity. Yes, you did talk about their transition. And how on earth did you not know that Natalie goes by she, her pronouns? It's on her Twitter bio. The doublethink of centrists is truly astounding. I made this initial criticism video in February, and I never looked on the Twitter bio for pronouns at that time, as I don't assume that everybody writes their pronouns on their Twitter bio. And for the record, no, I literally never once brought up Contra's gender identity in my entire 16-minute video. And it's rather amazing that basically none of their little ankle biters ever bring up any of the things that I actually did talk about when they tried to chew my shoes off. Okay, whatever. Maybe you didn't explicitly bring up the transition, but you referred to Natalie as Contra through the entire video, and you had to have known that this would have felt disrespectful to a transgender person. And you mentioned that she is having an identity crisis, which is an obvious dog whistle that implies that you presumably don't believe that she is actually a woman. Okay, I'm going to the store now. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and that was a reenactment of some version of a conversation I've had probably more than 20 times by now, ever since I made the mistake of making a critique video of the person who has grown into one of my 2 or 3 least favorite YouTubers, Contrapoints. Now, as anybody who actually watches the video will notice, I do not give a crap about this person's gender identity regarding my distaste for their videos and general attitude. I mean, we have somebody that basically comes right out and says, "Look at my fancy lighting and relentless attempts at edgy humor, which distract from the fact that I almost never say anything conclusive about anything. By the way, I'm totally smarter than Jordan Peterson and every other centrist because I can take a few different statements from a variety of them and then juxtapose their statements to those of somebody like Richard Spencer to create an entire field full of straw men. Donate to my Patreon." Granted, I don't think that they tell people donate to my Patreon, but, you know, you get the point. Regardless, I'm not going to rehash how much of a distaste I have for Contrapoints' YouTube channel, because ultimately I said everything that really needs to be said in that first video, and before doing so, I had to actually watch the entirety of 9 or 10 of Contra's long, boring videos. So I don't really want to talk about them again. After that, I didn't think I would have much of anything more to say, and while I ended up feeling compelled to make a few more videos where I talked about this person afterwards, due to a torrent of questions and criticisms about my initial video, I never made it a point to actually question Contra's transition. But do you know who certainly did question Contra's transition? Do you know who brought into question whether or not this person is really trans over and over and over? Contrapoints' own fans. That's who. Each and every time they showed up in my comments over the past 6 months trying to start an argument with me about Contra's gender, when I wasn't even talking about their gender at all in my video, they literally forced me to ask myself, well, honestly, how do I know if this person really is trans? Maybe they are faking it. I mean, what happens when somebody tells you, don't think of an elephant? You think of an elephant. No, I wasn't thinking about Contrapoints' gender, and if I had talked to them and they said that they transitioned, I would have said, okay, I guess you're trans. As I've known transgender people since 1996 and wanted to talk about ideas instead. So when somebody shows up to my video and tells me, why are you saying that Contrapoints isn't a woman? My answer ends up being some version of, I wasn't saying that. You're the one who said that. That being said, it hasn't just been well over a dozen or even 24 of this person's supposed fans that's been doing this. It's also been this person's friends, like Theron Meyer, who decided to get in on it, and even Contrapoints themselves, who tweeted at me acting like maybe I had ever once said that I wanted to have a conversation with them about their gender, which I literally never said I wanted to do anywhere at any time. The closest thing that I did was tweeting at them 4 or 5 months before, asking them to do a stream with me, asking what their gender identity was, or something simple like that. But of course, I didn't get a response to that tweet, though I assure you, if Contra had simply said, I identify as a woman, I would have said, thanks for letting me know. Instead, I seemingly fell into what seems almost like a trap, no pun intended, where my refusal to even devote any time or energy towards my unanswered gender question was eventually somehow used against me when I didn't use gendered language at all. So why? Why the hell did this happen in the first place, and why is it still happening? Why are people so convinced that I must view Contrapoints as a non-woman? Are they just using transgenderism as a shield from me criticizing the ideas? Or is there more to it? Thus, I figure that since countless people ended up making the argument that Contrapoints might not really be a woman by accusing me of thinking so, I figured that this fear that Contrapoints is faking their transition or something must be coming from somewhere, and thus, I might as well steelman the hypothetical possibility and elaborate on it. You see, Contra's fans basically asked me to do this. Careful what you wish for. That all said, the first thing to note is that Contrapoints is no newbie to YouTube. No, this person has been around for quite some time. Years, in fact. Apparently making the same types of bedroom atheist philosophy, coffee shop intellectual videos that basically every white guy used to make some number of years ago.
As a change in cognitive styles, perhaps, as opposed to a total loss. Because I think, well, there certainly is something that's being lost with the oral tradition and the transition to writing. Not that many of us today would be able to say, we should never have invented writing, let's go back to the oral tradition. And so I think we're probably getting something out of new media as well, although we're certainly losing maybe a certain
Of course, back then, basically nobody paid any attention to this person because, as I already mentioned, this person is certifiably boring. And although I actually found some of the ideas in the old video more worthwhile than I find their new work, I think that they were simply ignored because there were so many channels that were similar at the time. And so, in 2016, from the looks of what is still hosted on their current YouTube channel, this person came up with what appears to have been a new gimmick. The gimmick seemed to be to out-skeptic the skeptics by showing them that they are wrong about some things sometimes, and that feminists and social justice people maybe aren't really all that bad if you bend over backwards until you're 6 feet underground to cherry pick their best moments and willingly forget how they actually act day to day. And of course, Contrapoints did this all in drag. This ended up getting a lot more attention than the old stuff because while the views espoused by the new skeptic feminist persona were inconsistent, shallow, and sometimes directly self-contradictory, there simply wasn't a single semi-intelligent leftist feminist YouTube channel in the entire skeptic sphere, and so a few thousand die-hard social justice audience members were desperately waiting for one to exist, and thus showered the cross-dresser who tried to fill the gap with praise. That, or people simply hate-watched Contrapoints to watch this person try to form a cogent argument, knowing that apparently this was the best YouTuber that the left has to offer at the moment, and they wanted to be familiar with their arguments and arguing style. I eventually did that a bit myself, of course. Either way, this new strategy succeeded in getting Contrapoints a bunch of views, some exposure with people like Blair White and Sargon, and possibly an entirely new social circle, assuming that H-Bomber Guy, Theron Meyer, Philosophy Tube, Innuendo Studios, and Three Arrows all hang out together, which is probably a lot to assume, but whatever. That all said, a number of months to a year or so pass of Contrapoints doing the routine where they act like a skeptic, attempt to cryptically argue in favor of the left without actually really making any arguments in favor of it, and then dress up in female clothing the whole time. At first, Contra called themselves a cross-dresser, probably because that's what Contra felt that they were at the time. However, once somebody gets a lot of internet attention, individuals have a tendency to internalize the audience's views of them and start to feel as if maybe they really are the way that the audience sees them deep down. You can ask any YouTuber about this. And so, with fans like Contras, who needs a hypnotist? I mean, go ahead and look through my comments below my original video and you can find irrefutable evidence of just how relentlessly obsessed with Contrapoints' gender Contra's fans are, to the point where I have to wonder if any of them watch Contra for any reason besides the fact that Contra is trans. Clearly, Contra's fans are so preoccupied with Contra's gender that they won't even allow me to make a video about the ideas that this person is presenting in a capacity that doesn't have anything to do with their gender. And clearly, this has also gotten under Contra's skin and made them paranoid because somehow Contra was under the impression that I was interested in discussing their gender identity when I obviously wanted to talk about politics if you actually watch the video. Seriously, imagine for just one moment what it must be like living in a world where you are surrounded by these types of people that are Contra's fans. And yes, of course, these types of people peer pressure each other into first identifying as non-binary, and then eventually a lot of these people clearly start feeling inclined to actually go on hormones after people make fun of them for being trans-trenders. I mean, let's be honest. Don't most people feel as if that's what happened to Milo Stewart and Riley Dennis? Everybody called the two of them trans-trenders, and then eventually each of them went on hormones, as if to say, oh yeah, I'll show those trolls, I'll become a real trans. This is all just a hypothetical. I really don't know the answer to any of it, and to be truthful, I would have been perfectly happy to never make this video or even think about this in any such detail back when I first became interested in trying to figure out what the deal was with this new sophistical YouTuber that people were talking about for some strange reason. I wanted to talk to this person on a stream and determine if they were as poorly articulated in conversation with me as they were in their drawn-out, indirect videos. And then, if they were as indirect and poorly articulated, I wanted to hopefully get them to give an honest answer about why exactly they make videos in the first place, despite the fact that they don't really have much of anything to say and spend 95% of their time beating around the bush. But when I couldn't have that conversation, I made a video about what I disliked about their videos, and it certainly wasn't about their gender. And now that literally dozens of people have questioned it by projecting their own skepticism about Contra's transition onto me, I have to wonder if maybe there really is some connection between this person's boring channel, political identity crisis, and gender identity crisis. You said it, not me. So I shouldn't even have to finish your thoughts for you. But I will say this. How would you feel if Contrapoints eventually decided that they weren't really trans and had to go through detransitioning? Worse, what if Contra ended up attempting suicide and left a long note about how they no longer felt like they were the same person they remember being 10 years ago, and that they were living a lie both as a YouTuber and as a transgender person who hastily transitioned due to peer pressure? Has it ever occurred to you that much of this person's discomfort that they are so eager to talk about regarding all of their internal grapplings with their own gender identity has come as a result of you? You, Contra's fans. Has it ever occurred to you that you guys are making this person insecure? Really, I'm just making this video to be something for you to think about next time, maybe before you start flinging angry comments at people like me. No, I don't think that people only transition due to peer pressure. If you watch my videos, you'll notice that I never say anything remotely similar, and I have no idea if Contrapoints is a real transgender person or not. I honestly tried my best not to care. However, I will definitely say that if there's any population of people who would be likely to transition because of peer pressure and get on hormones that they probably would be best to not be on, it would definitely be leftist YouTubers with fans like you. Drop me a comment and stay tuned.